Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Oh, you can do better than that. Come on, Ireland. How you guys doing? That's right. Well, I'll do a shot of whiskey later. They're going to be passing them out. I think Dingle is one of the sponsors. My name is Damian Pelliccione. I am the CEO and one of the 4 fabulous co-founders of Revry, which is now the world's largest LGBTQ global streaming television network. You know, that's a lot. But you know what's funny is, like, I decided last minute that I'm going to pull a Brené Brown. Anyone saw the Brené Brown Netflix special? If you have, raise your hand. I know, like, a lot of Americans in the room probably have seen it. If you haven't, definitely watch it. And I threw out my presentation, and I put this new presentation together just this morning. You know, Brené is actually someone that I really look up to. And, you know, I titled this panel, Unapologetically Queer. And there is a lot of meaning for that for me, and there's a lot of meaning for that even for how we started Revry. But I wanted to start with a quote from Brené, and I believe this will set the tone for what I'm about to talk about today. She says that vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate way to measure braveness and valor. There's so much to being vulnerable on stage. There's so much to being vulnerable in business. There's so much to being who you are unapologetically in this world. I am identifying as non-binary, so I use they, them, their pronouns. I'm Hollywood's actually first openly non-binary CEO and executive and co-founder. And what's really unique about, you know, what I really want to discuss today is talking about the opportunity of being other. You know, we walk through this world as LGBTQ people in a very different way than we do with our allies and our brothers and our sisters and our thems and theys. You know, and one of the most, I think, interesting parts of being other is it creates space for other people to be just like you and to open the door to be able to lead your businesses, your startups, in an authentic way. One of my all-time heroes is Steve Jobs. I always said I wanted to be like the queer Steve Jobs, and Tim Cook came and became CEO of Apple. But hopefully one day I'll have lunch with him if he's watching, or Apple will acquire Revry. That's my all-time dream. Steve Jobs said that, you know, one of the most inspiring quotes from him is stay hungry and stay foolish. I remember growing up in Toronto, Canada. I'm now a dual citizen of the United States. And growing up, I had 2 big influences in my life. The first one was my mother, a social justice warrior, a politician, a member of parliament. I know in Ireland you know what that means. And, you know, she stood up for causes and minorities and people who were not like her, who didn't walk in the same privilege, walk in the same space, or came from the same socioeconomic background. She instilled values on myself and my sister Kelly that still last with me today, probably one of my superhero strengths in leading this business. I remember when I was a kid, she made us invite all of the boys from elementary school if I wanted to have a birthday party. I couldn't exclude anyone. My father was an entrepreneur. He started a family business with my uncle and my cousins, became the second largest Italian cheese distributor to Canada and one of the top in the United States. He's since retired. And I think that one of the most exciting things that I always say is that my 2 influences in life were cheese and politics. And now it makes sense as you see me standing here today on this stage in Dublin for the first time. But, you know, I always knew that I was other. I always knew that I was not like the other kids when I was growing up. I really didn't come out until I was about 20 years old after living in New York City for 2 years, experienced 9/11. That's what thrust me to Los Angeles. I'm 41 years old. That was 21 years ago this October. Can't believe it. Lived more of my adult life in Los Angeles. And I did what every young 20-year-old twink gay boy does when they move to Los Angeles, which was try to become an actor. And I realized in that moment, you know, I was on a few shows like the Gilmore Girls, which you can still watch on Netflix. I had 5 lines on a single episode, did a whole bunch of independent films. It was a wonderful time back in the early 2000s. Worked for so many jobs, so many restaurants, so many different parts of the business, as a production assistant, as, art directing assistant, as producer. I tried all aspects of the business. I didn't really understand this next slide until I was probably in my later 30s when we started Revry. Failure is a success. There is one of the top TED Talks in the whole world that I absolutely love. We make all of our staff at Revry actually watch it. It's a prerequisite when you get hired. And we make them stand up and tell the entire class, our staff, why they do what they do. Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think one of the biggest things is learning that lesson through failure. I failed at so many jobs and so many startups, got fired from so many different places. But I truly believe that it wasn't for those experiences, I would not be the CEO or the leader of this movement and this company that we have today. Revry was started in myself and my husband, who's one of my co-founders, who's sitting right there. Chris Rodriguez is our living room in Echo Park in Los Angeles, where every good startup starts in someone's living room, right? I had Aaliyah and LaShawn, my two equal co-founders, in that room with me and pitched them this idea after listening to Tim Cook's speech about tvOS, this new operating system for the big screen at home. And I thought, when Apple does something, it truly changes the world. And I was inspired. I was always inspired by Apple. I was part of that culture for years. And I decided to take action and create a product, the first ever LGBTQ streaming network, that would interface with many over-the-top television devices. Now, what was really unique is that we were equal co-founders. Everyone had equal skin in the game. Two women of color, African-American, Aaliyah J. Daniels, our COO, and LaShawn McGee, also non-binary, also an Army veteran. And we are founded by true diversity. What was ironic is Leah and Chris went to law school together. Great to have two lawyers, by the way. Always good for deal flow when you're a startup. And LaShawn's background was in production and programming, and mine, obviously, I was the big thinker, the marketer, the sales guy. When we were kind of deciding on the name, because everyone asked me this, what does Revry mean? It's based off of reverie, a mystical, fantastical idea which we thought that we were creating for our own community. And we believe that true representation starts from ownership and leadership, something that you've never seen or you don't usually see in Hollywood. And this is really important because, one of the biggest successes that I always talk about is the fact, that we were so diverse in our ownership and came from so many different backgrounds. I was lucky, and we were meant for success right from the beginning. And ironically enough, I do want to say one thing to my beautiful husband who's sitting here today in the audience. If it wasn't for him, I would not be doing this today because he kept telling me, you're not a great actor, and I wasn't. You're probably better at business and speaking in front of people like I'm doing right now. The last person that was up on the stage was just talking about listening and being good at listening and being a leader who can listen. And that's exactly what I had to learn how to do when I became the CEO and decided to lead this company. I believe that passion fuels innovation. None of us would be here in this room, in this entire conference, if we weren't passionate about some area of technology that fuels what we believe can change the world. We're changing the world through representation at Revry, being something bigger than we are for our own community. And it leads me to, Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO of Facebook. She says, what if you were not afraid? CEOs aren't afraid. We do get scared sometimes. We're crazy, big ideas, wild thinkers, and we try to enroll folks in what we believe the future looks like. But passion is really the driving force between why we're trying to go to Mars, why we created an iPhone. What was the meaning of all this hardware or software or cloud-based systems or CDNs or whatever it is that we use to make our lives better? Because we want to change the world at the core. We did that, and we've had experiences with that at Revry. There's one story I always tell when I'm talking more about Revry in a B2B presentation. I had the pleasure of being in India in Mumbai in 2019. And I was the keynote speaker at Kashish, the LGBTQ film festival. Territory of the world I've always wanted to go to, but never had the chance. And I took the opportunity. So excited. It was June 2019, exactly 3 years ago around this time. At the opening night, they asked me to come on stage and give a little plug. Hey, I'm Damian. Come see my speech at 4 o'clock on Friday. And at the reception, there was this lineup of queer women who wanted to talk to me. And I didn't understand why. For context, in 2017, we created an original and we released it called The Other Love Story, which was a Hindi lesbian drama series, one of the first ever created in India. And we had all this traffic. Cut to 2 years later, I'm in India. And I have all these women lining up to talk to me. It wasn't until about the third or fourth woman where she's like, you don't know why all these lesbians are talking to you. I'm like, I have no clue. She pulls out her phone. She's like, I want to show you something. And she turns on her Tinder. And she funnels for lesbian. Every single image on that page was an image from our project, The Other Love Story. It's how queer women were identifying in a part of the world where they didn't have the safety and security that I have being out and open in the United States. And for context, they only had decriminalized being LGBTQ in India in 2018. I cried, I lost my shit. I woke up Aaliyah, LaShawn, and Chris in the West. I told them this story. Look what we're doing. Look what the power of media can do. And look, media should be counsel culture, not cancel culture. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. That is counsel culture. He was enrolling us as people to believe that we should have equal rights, regardless of your sexual orientation, which wasn't a movement yet back then, your race, even your gender as male or female. They were counseling the rest of the world to teach them to feel like they could have space, that you knew someone who was African American, and that they should have the same civil rights that everyone else does. It's a very similar fight to Hispanics and Asian American and LGBTQ. We live in a time where our existence as queer people are a protest. With everything going on in Florida and Texas, vote for Beto O'Rourke, if anyone's watching. We need to counsel others, not cancel them. This is so imperative. This is going to be the antidote to social media. Because that I believe, this is the next statement that I'll say, I believe that our greatest superhero strength is what makes us different. One of my favorite quotes is Marianne Williamson. And she talks about, if you let your light shine, we unconsciously allow others to allow themselves to let their light shine. This is huge. I had queer kids lining up to me yesterday at some of the receptions who wanted to meet me simply because I was wearing rainbow eyeshadow and heels. I live my life unapologetically. I live my life because I believe in the power of diversity and inclusion. We all come from different worlds, whether it's a different territory, a different family, a different college you graduated from, a different language, a different culture. And when you put all of those minds in a room together, you will fuel innovation so much faster than if it is all one race, one gender, one age group, one sexual orientation. This is how we create big business. This is how we create companies and become entrepreneurs at scale. Diversity, Forbes reported in 2018, only less than 5% of all capital in the United States went to minorities. That included women, LGBTQ, African American, Hispanic, and Asian. 5%. But we gross 30 to 40% higher margins than anybody else. And that's because we fight for it. We keep it. We hold on to it. We have passion for what we do. We know what it took to get it. So I encourage all the VCs and the angels in this space to make sure that they are investing into impact funds and impact startups like Revry, because we actually can create change in a meaningful way. In the US alone, the LGBTQ economy is over $1.1 trillion a year. 1.1 trillion. And identifiably, they make up about 7% of the entire population. Self-identified, we know that number is bigger. Globally, it's about 3.4 trillion, but that number, that GDP number is not correct because we don't have full equality or we don't have data yet all across the world. We don't even have marriage acceptance yet all across the world, which is a basic human right. This is the opportunity now to really create meaningful and lasting and impactful change. And it's by standing in these rooms, taking up space, talking to your friends who are part of our community and other communities that do not look like you, do not talk like you, and do not walk like you. Because the power of that far exceeds anything that you could do. Learn about them, talk to them, enjoy the culture, take it in, breathe it in. It's such a part of our human experience, and it is so much more meaningful and will make you a more worldly business leader than you probably are today. This last quote that I'm going to leave you with is actually a tattoo my mother gave me. It's on my arm. It's an anonymous quote. It is my motto for life. Learn from yesterday, live for today, and hope for tomorrow. Because that is truly all we have. And the last quote underneath this is one of my favorite inspirations. Life is like a movie. Make your own ending. Kermit the Frog. We all have the chance to do something big. We all have the chance to be bigger than ourselves, to heal the world, to create change, impactful change. And it starts with diversity and inclusion. It starts with who you hire, who your co-founders are, who your family is, and who your chosen family are. And for that, I am inevitably always grateful to be in places like this. And thank you, Dublin Tech Summit, for having me. It's such a joy to talk to you today. Thank you so much.